Mike Johnson pulled off the political magic trick of getting the one big beautiful bill passed through the House by a one-vote margin. Now it's up to the Senate to fulfill Scott Bessent's deadline for the Senate to pass on the one big beautiful bill to Trump's desk by Independence Day. But what are they waiting for? House conservatives are correctly pushing the Senate to further trim the bill to cut $1.7 trillion over the decade. Why? Because according to dynamic scoring, that's how much the bill would currently add to the deficit. So yes, you do want to speed up those dates where we overturn the Green New scam passed by Joe Biden, Medicaid work requirements. But there's trouble in the Senate. You have the so-called Medicaid moderates, including Josh Hawley, who claims to be a conservative, saying they don't want to defund Obamacare. You have Ron Johnson, who says he wants to go line by line of the federal budget to bring spending back down to pre-pandemic levels, which is, in fact, a cut to entitlements like Social Security, which Donald Trump has said he will not do. So what are you waiting for? Work with the bill that you already have. Because guess what? We are over 4 months into this administration, and the Senate hasn't actually brought up a real alternative. They're trying to live in a world where they get to reauthorize a bill from scratch, even though tick-tock, the deadline is coming.
Tiana, there's a lot going on with this entire piece of legislation. First and foremost is Mike Johnson on Monday morning saying they might introduce a new reconciliation bill. It seems like Republicans just don't have any idea what's going on. And I want to ask you the heart of this question being, is Donald Trump to blame? Because on the one hand, he has been consistent and said, I'm not going to approve, wholesale slashing of Social Security or Medicare. He's got these red lines out there. But late last week, when asked about this in the Oval Office, he basically said, so is this a problem created by the leader of the party, and Mike Johnson and probably House Republicans are going to deal with those negative impacts come 2026 when they either haven't reauthorized these tax cuts, or this bill has turned into something which actually pisses off the hardcore conservatives because spending is ballooning. Is that the track we're on right now?
I mean, yes. So Trump is just the symptom of the Washington problem, which is that the imperial presidency has been designed by Congress because Congress doesn't want to do its job, right? It's why you had Doge able to come in and overhaul the entire federal government, because guess what? If Congress wanted to actually do its job and enshrine these positions, they could, but they don't, right? So with Trump, you see how auxiliary the legislation is, or the legislature as a body is fundamentally auxiliary to Washington in general. We saw it with Joe Biden, how much of his administration was just done via executive fiat. Trump, the tariffs, the trade war, so much of it just done by executive fiat. Like, people don't really want to work with Congress, even though this is where the sausage is made, right? You cannot change any of the mandatory spending that comprises about 3/4 of our annual outlays without legislation. And so, look, if President Tiana Desher were in office.
First female president, perhaps.
And Ron Johnson came to me by saying, I want to bring back spending down to pre-pandemic levels. President Desher would want to put Ron Johnson's face on Mount Rushmore, because I know what that means. What that means is, jacking up the retirement age for Medicare and Social Security to at least 70 and dramatically reducing outlays. And that is something that I think needs to be done. But Donald Trump has already said that's a non-starter. So when you hear Johnson say back down to pre-pandemic spending, all of the increase in spending since COVID has been because of the structure of entitlements, right? There is no magic third bill that allows you to have your cake and eat it too. And that's just the reality. And this is why the Medicaid moderates are so off their rocker. You guys don't want, so right now the red line that Hawley has said, because he's saying, maybe the work requirements are okay, but the red line is changing the funding mechanism, where when Medicaid was originally designed, it was supposed to be roughly a 50-50 partnership, of 50% federal spending, 50% state spending. With the Obamacare expansion, those able-bodied, childless, young adults, people our age who don't have kids, they don't have to work. They get Obamacare, and the federal government pays 90% of their health expenses. So, you have some people like Chip Roy saying, why don't we just make it so that way, the impoverished, the disabled, single young moms, why don't we make it so way they get at least as much money as we give Obamacare members? And they're saying that's the red line. So if Republicans can't even defund like 1% of Obamacare, can we do anything?
It seems like not. I mean, I would argue we've seen this for countless cycles now, dating back to when the ACA was enacted. Republicans are first going to repeal and wholly replace Obamacare. Then they're going to amend it. And now they're
skinny repeal.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like, where the pavement meets the road is where they have problems. And obviously campaigning is one thing, but governing has proven across, majorities on both sides of the aisle to be much harder than it appears on the campaign trail, I think.
Yeah, and let me just point out, a conservative movement where Obamacare expansion funding is a sacred cow is not a conservative movement I want any part of.